guys, today's question is one I actually did Google, and it's how do I know if my partner is cheating on me?
Yeah. Okay, before we answer that question, let's go over a review. So this is from May 30th, and it says, I have been sober for over a year, and this podcast has helped me tremendously grow up being in my 30s. I had a lot of baggage from my childhood and unhealthy attachment and insecurity. And the honesty and tips and tools given through this podcast from all perspectives has helped my marriage, my kids, and me get the best out of myself. Highly recommend to anyone who is looking to grow in a healthy mind state.
Oh, I love it.
That's cool.
The work after the hard work, right?
Man, don't I know that? Holy moly.
Okay, so how do you know that your partner's having an affair? What are the signs? What are the symptoms of that? And I think before we jump into this, I definitely want to give a little bit of a disclaimer, which is what I hope this episode doesn't do is trigger anxiety to think that your partner is having an affair.
Yeah.
So we're going to break down really specific things to look at to identify whether or not that could be happening or not. Okay. And it doesn't mean for sure that it's happening, but if you see these signs and you see a lot of these signs, then I would do some pretty straightforward confronting of some of the behaviors.
Okay, so you might be listening and thinking, maybe I'm crossing lines. I haven't necessarily had an affair, but I might be crossing lines. So
am I vulnerable to have an affair?
Yeah. So it's kind of going to touch both.
Absolutely. I think as we talk about these assessments of yourself and of your partner, hopefully you're asking yourself too, am I at risk here? And do I need to be careful and do certain things to safeguard myself as well? So we have a list that we're just going to go over a little bit and break down. So there's the obvious things, right? The obvious things like they get really, really uncomfortable when you touch their phone.
Mm.
Yeah.
That was a big one for me. It would always be in my pocket.
Yeah,
Right.
it wasn't just left out.
I never left it out.
Yeah, they never leave their phone out. So ask yourself, do you get really, really uncomfortable if your spouse touches your phone because you have things to hide on there? That's not a good thing. And they might not want you to touch their phone because they're hiding some financial thing from you or some other thing. It doesn't necessarily mean an affair, but that's a sign that they're not just open. That, I can hand my wife my phone and say, hey, will you text so-and-so for me or whatever, right? So that she can have, it doesn't bother me. If I had things to hide, that would bother me. That would be hard for me. So that's the obvious one. If they're spending a lot of time with somebody and they're minimizing it and saying, oh, she's just a friend or a coworker or
he's just my work husband or
my work husband. They can ease sometimes the person who's having the affair will try to ease their spouse into the idea of that relationship, yet be crossing lines and crossing boundaries all along the way, right?
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
Yes and yes, for sure.
Yeah. Ashlyn, what were some of the signs that you just started to notice with Kobe?
So I used to go visit Kobe at work, and they had so many like inside jokes, and they knew way more about Kobe than sometimes I even knew. And I was like, so he wasn't having affairs with girls he was working with, right? So no blame there for those of you who knew who he worked with. It was just he was in deep waters. He was crossing boundaries all over the place.
Right.
And so for me, it was like he doesn't even know that that's not okay.
Yeah, to be fair, it was I worked and lived in such an unboundaried way that I didn't even acknowledge or recognize that my actions were far beyond what's appropriate.
Well, and with that, I mean, you know, you go out in the workplace or whatever, or just in public, you go to church or whatever. People send off certain messages, and those messages say things like, "Look, I'm available. I'm available to flirt with, to push a little bit of lines with. I'm not boundaried. I'm married, but I'm not boundaried." So yeah, and what will happen is you'll attract the people into your life who want to take advantage of that, and they'll pick up the little subtleties of those things, right? And so if you're at work unboundaried, you're also kind of open to relationships there. Another thing I'm hearing, Kobe, is that you were a different person at work than you were with Ashley.
I totally was.
They knew all about you. You were funny, this, that, and then you'd go home and you were a different person with Ashley.
Yes, very much so. And I think it was because, well, there were many reasons, but that describes me so accurately. And I think what I knew but didn't acknowledge was that the way that I worked wasn't okay at home, and I didn't want to cause any suspicion. And so I would put on work hat, and then I would go home and put on like partner dad hat.
You did, but you also, like, he would take texts all through the night and phone calls from work, and he worked with all women, and they were beautiful women. So I was like, this is not normal. And then we started getting neighbors who would say, "Oh man, I saw you tagged in all these photos on Facebook with all these beautiful women, and they have their arms around you," and I'm over there going, "Yeah, isn't that stupid? Like, that's my husband."
Yeah.
And they're like, "What do you do for work? It looks awesome."
Yeah.
And he's like, minimize, like, "Oh yeah, nothing."
The minimizing.
You don't like it because
I'm trying to
uncomfortable.
downplay it. I'm trying to minimize it. In truth, I'm gaslight. I remember gaslighting you, just thinking back, a ton. Like, Ashlyn, you're making a big deal out of nothing.
Oh, for
or,
sure.
This is just my job, and this is just what I need to do.
And then I would go to, like, why can't I be confident in who I am and that I am? Or
Yeah,
that,
now you're
it's like,
spinning off in crazy making mode while he's like telling you that you're crazy because well, what's really going on is your intuition and your gut is saying something's not right here.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
He also started going to bed at a different time than me, so he'd stay up late, and I'd go to
I think
bed.
I always stayed up late, though.
You kind of did, but it was more so when you were having an affair.
Oh, yeah.
And he
totally.
would give me opportunities, which sounds terrible, but he would be like, "Hey, go out for a night for yourself."
Right.
Yep.
So that I can go and
I'll
do my
watch the
thing.
girls. You go ahead and go out, and
So manipulative, which is, look, I'm being kind. Like, go take care of yourself. But the thinking is, I got to make some space so that I can act out.
Yeah, and this is for all those who are listening who have betrayed. This, what we just articulated, is one of the reasons why there is zero trust and safety, and why the betrayed, no matter if it's a man or a woman, feels crazy and can't trust a thing. They can't get over
great point,
this.
Kobe.
And so when you hear what I've just shared, it's important that you recognize that that's why your partner, again, male or female, does not trust you, does not want to, is so afraid of being vulnerable.
The damage is not done by the affair itself. It is. That's painful, and that's not okay, and that breaks trust.
Yeah.
But the real damage with betrayal trauma is done with all of the stuff we're
The
talking
deceit,
about. The manipulation. It really wears on the partner's self-confidence.
Yep.
Their
ability to function as a partner. Right.
Understanding their gut, understanding their
What's
vulnerability
reality
in a
and what's
relationship.
not.
Absolutely.
Because I would try to skew your reality, or not your reality. I'd try to skew reality into what I needed it to be, bless you, in order for me to carry on.
Yeah. Well, we're giving all the examples, but he was also really mean.
Yeah.
And he showed up differently. And I remember saying, "Who have you become? You're not the man I married." And I would straight up ask him, "Are you having an affair?"
Yep.
And I've said this before on the podcast. I wish I could go back and to really sit in those promptings and feelings of like, something's off here.
Right.
And not just go to him with it, rather than like sit in it and figure things out for myself, to really question, to go to God, and kind of seek some inspiration rather than just accusing, because he, of course, always said, no,
Right.
you're crazy.
Right.
Totally.
That meanness it happens for a couple reasons. One is if there's guilt there, and so with an affair, when the affair starts to happen, the partner now becomes just a person who represents guilt to them. They feel guilty
Yes.
because of their
Yes.
partner, and so they want to push them away. They want to
Yes.
keep them at bay because they don't want to get too close because it's too painful.
Yeah.
The other thing is sometimes they'll be mean to their partner so that a fight will come up. The partner will be mean back or shut down, and then that will justify their behavior. See, I can go do this because they're mean to me or this or that. So they'll pick fights intentionally. They'll play the persecutor, try to get their partner to play the persecutor or the victim, and justify their affair.
And I would also say that the story that I told myself was such that resentment was
Was the fuel?
just this. It was like kudzu. If you ever, I lived in Atlanta for a couple years, and kudzu was like it's like ivy on steroids, and it just engulfs everything, and it grows rapidly. And my resentment towards Ashlyn, and the story that I told myself about you is you're this, and this, therefore I'm entitled to this.
Yeah.
And so the deeper the affair got, the more resentment I had. It just grew out of control.
And the more resentment you needed to build so that you could keep justifying and fueling the behaviors, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. So should we start to get into some of these questions? to look
Okay.
at?
Yeah, because it's like there are questions to consider and ask yourself. Like, you might be one of these things. You might be all of these things, and depending on who that's with, it's something to. Okay, obviously, I'm not in a relationship.
Right, but what you said to me before we started this episode was as we go through these, you might have some of these things happening. It doesn't mean you're having an affair or going to have an affair.
Right.
If you have a lot of these things happening, you really need to look at this.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so are you turning to your friend to comfort rather than turning to your spouse?
Yeah. And when you say your friend, we're talking about friend.
With benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
That type of friend.
But really, even any friend, like.
Yeah.
We should want to go to our spouse for those things. Do you find yourself thinking about your friend even when you're at home?
Yeah.
Do you seek opportunities to be with your friend even when work doesn't require you to be together?
Yeah. So hey, let's go to lunch, or let's hang out after work for longer to work on that one project together, just so that we can connect.
Totally.
Little things like that.
Do you email or text your friend when you're not together? Have you told your spouse about your messages?
Okay, Ashlyn, I just want to say, as you're asking these questions, if you are doing some of these things, you know in your heart what your intentions are. Like, you know why you're sending those text messages. You can justify all day long. You can say it's about work or this or that. You know that you might be sending those text messages or hanging out after work or going to lunch because deep down you want to connect more than
You're fishing.
You're fishing. You're throwing out
Bait.
You're throwing out lines to see if she'll bite or if he'll bite. And so you know it. So these questions are good to ask yourself, but at the same time you've got to be honest with yourself about what your intentions are.
Okay. Does the relationship with your friend take more of your time and energy than the relationship with your spouse? So I've heard, going way out of your way to help a friend when you don't want to show up and be a parent or that type of thing. Do you compare your spouse to your friend?
Mm-hmm.
Would you be uncomfortable introducing your spouse to your friend?
Yeah.
All of these are just terrific questions to ask, and to consider and to think through, and
what I think
wow.
is important about this is it's not just a physical affair. It's
Right.
like, hey, you might be in an emotional affair, and that's where I think these questions can really define that. It goes a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
and
Meaning
it's
this
that
can-
betrayal can cannot even be physical, and it's the actions of the lies and the deceit, right?
Yes.
There's many vehicles that can facilitate this kind of behavior, and that could be email, that could be text, that could be Snapchat, that could be Marco Polo, that could, I mean, any number of vehicles, could be social media. And so that when you choose a particular vehicle, if you will, and that sounds kind of strange considering what we're talking about, but if whatever vehicle you use to communicate will compel the behavior or will guide the behavior and the direction that it goes, and that over time won't be enough, and so there will be an escalation, like with addiction. It's like there's got to be something more intense, there's got to be something that's I've got to have contact in a different way, et cetera, so it can really build based upon which vehicle of communication is used, if that
Absolutely.
makes any sense.
Yes. It's infidelity is really interesting because I think a lot of times what we consider it is if you have sex with another person, that's what infidelity is. And we know there's such thing as emotional affairs. I've heard so many things through the years. I've heard guys, who've only slept with prostitutes, and not to minimize that at all, but then guys who have had long-lasting relationships with other women and have never had sex with them. And the fact of the matter is if you just go hook up with somebody and don't have a relationship, or if you have a long-lasting relationship with somebody, the betrayal still is there.
Yes.
And it's different in some ways. It hurts in different ways, but it's still that feeling of betrayal, and that shattered trust is what comes into the relationship. So as you went through those questions, Ashlyn, the fact of the matter is if you're just doing those things that Ashlyn just asked, you're only doing those things. So you're texting someone now and then, you're thinking of them, you're hanging out with, you are creating a big crack in the foundation of your relationship. It doesn't need to get to the point of physical connection with that person in order for that to be a reality, that it's damaging your relationship.
Okay.
Totally true.
So the tough questions. If I am doing any of the, if I'm doing multiple of those things, what can I do? What am I supposed to do? And if I suspect my spouse is doing these things, what do I do? Two different questions.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're engaged in those, let me just say this: if you're engaged in any of those behaviors, then you've got to just eliminate contact altogether, and you've got to be super boundaried. And what I mean by that is you've got to just stop communicating. If it's crossed those lines, just say this is done. And I would actually have the conversation like this correspondence, whatever it is, communication, relationship has gone to a place that I didn't expect and didn't expect it to. So we have to stop.
So you just said one of the most important, which is start having some boundaries, some real boundaries with them, and they're going to be confused. Like, huh? What?
This isn't anything.
This isn't anything, and you're like, don't talk to me ever again. You might have to be to that point where it's don't talk to me ever again. The other thing that will be really helpful is come out with it to somebody. So don't keep all these secrets to yourself.
Totally.
Talk to a good friend, talk to somebody and say, look, I'm having these feelings. This is real for me. I need to get this out so I can surrender it over, have some accountability around it, because I don't want this to progress any further.
And that's not to somebody who's going to be like, whoa, that's cool, really.
Whoa, dude.
We don't want anybody to
No.
fan the flames.
Me too.
Yeah.
He told his Me Too friends, and that wasn't super helpful.
Well, and that's what you'll naturally seek out at first. You want people to validate why you're doing it, so that you don't feel so bad.
Yep, for sure. So you want to make sure that you can just be really, really mindful of that one piece. So keep going, Brandon.
So get out of secrecy, start to have some boundaries, okay, and start to be really honest with yourself about what's happening and why it's happening, okay, and then also play the tape forward is another tool.
Think it through to conclusion.
Yeah, think it through to the consequences of a full-fledged affair. Do you want those consequences? Maybe you've had an affair in the past and you're starting to engage again in a relationship like this. You know what the consequences are, and you know it's not worth it. But while you're in it, you're tricking yourself, saying, "Oh, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to matter that much." Get real with yourself about the consequences. So play the tape forward. Okay.
That's super important, and I never did that. And the truth is anytime my mind would go there, I would shut it down. I would justify it. I would ignore it. There were all kinds of ways that I would run from that whole concept of playing it through to conclusion.
Right.
I mean, you just get hijacked by the whole process, because there's a certain amount of physiological response that you get, a rush that you get when you're engaged in those behaviors, to where you lose track of time, you lose track of where you are, you lose track of what your responsibilities are for work or for your family, your partner, your kids, whomever.
Right.
And all that stuff goes out the window. It's actually quite incredible that happens, and I live that, and I know what that's like, and it is devastating.
Right. Okay, next question. What if you suspect?
Yeah.
That
What is the right thing? Because I didn't do the right thing necessarily. Because he always told me no, he wasn't. And I do believe I was prompted.
Mhm.
I just didn't know what to do with it.
Shoulda,
Over and
woulda,
over.
shoulda, woulda, coulda,
Oh,
though,
yeah.
right?
Hindsight's
Hindsight, yeah. It's hard to go up to somebody and say, no, I know something's happening, when you don't really
Yeah.
know what
I
it
didn't
is.
have proof.
Right? So this is a tough one, because we talk about the fear cycle and not controlling and not hovering and all of those things. It is sometimes really helpful to gather information. And, it's been a blessing to many of the people that I've worked with who have picked up their spouse's phone and seen something on it. I've worked with people who have gotten in disguise and gotten on airplanes with their spouse to see who they're sitting next to and things like that. I'm not suggesting this stuff, but trust your gut. If you're feeling a lot of the things that we've talked about today, you can be honest with your spouse about that. You can go up to them and you can say, look, I don't know what's going on. I just know something's off. And I suspect that something's happening that I don't know. I'll do that in therapy sessions a lot, where we'll make no progress with a couple, and they're trying, but they're not really trying.
Sounds like us.
And I'll say stuff like, you guys, we're stuck, and I don't know why. I feel like there's something big out there that we're not talking about that needs to come to light. And you guys won't move forward unless that comes to light. And I've done that a few times, and almost every time something has come up. So just to bring that up and be clear about it, and let them know your relationship isn't going to progress toward intimacy and real closeness and safety and trust until those things are dealt with. Now, I have worked with people who their spouses have accused them of affairs and things like that, and it hasn't been happening. And that's a really tricky situation, because the partner's kind of like, well, do I admit to something I haven't done? And that's obviously not the right thing to do. And they just need to stay honest, and they need to stay consistent, and they need to try to get down to, why does my partner feel like I'm having an affair when I'm not? Mm-hmm. I must be doing something, or something's not right about our relationship, so that we can create that safety and that trust.
I like the statement that you said, Brandon, which was really important, and I wonder if that would have changed anything for me had I heard you say that. And that was, I know something is going on.
Something's up. Something's not right.
I know something is going on, and I don't know about it.
Well, and I think it goes back to, Brandon said this before, it's all about the way you present something. So I was presenting it like with a knife, almost.
Right.
I know you're cheating, and you're a different person, and I was so angry, which that's okay. I'm validated in the anger, right?
Totally.
But it didn't ever give him the opportunity to be honest with me.
Yeah.
And
that's true. That's hard.
But the truth is back then, Ashlyn, I wasn't willing to be honest. Yeah. I wasn't willing to own up to it. I wasn't willing to face it. I simply wasn't. And even if you had presented it in the quote unquote best way possible, if I wasn't ready, then I simply would be held down to not.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that, as cold as that sounds, I'm just giving everybody here a peek behind the curtain for my experience as the person who betrayed twice, because it's important for you to understand the various ways that person thinks in moments of infidelity.
Right.
That's not everybody, but that's my experience.
Right. All right. So maybe we stirred the pot a little bit for you today. You listen and you're thinking, there's some things I need to address. There's some things I need to face.
Yeah.
And if we have, then good. It's better to go through the hard stuff than suffer for the long run.
For sure.
So face the music, deal with it, and get real with yourself, get real with your partner, and start to create safety, trust, and love again.
Yeah. It is possible, if you're the person out there who is in the middle of betraying your partner, if you're the person who has betrayed, like me, I betrayed Ashlyn the second time, and I was going to take it to my grave. Just remember that there is a way to regain trust. There is a way to regain safety. And it's possible for you to learn how to grow, to go through that and learn how to never repeat that again because of the growth that you need internally.
Well, so there's a third option, which is, what I mean by that is, oftentimes they think, well, if I tell my wife or my husband, they'll leave me.
Totally.
And oftentimes that's the case. And so then the second option is, I'll take it to the grave. I just won't tell them.
Yeah.
But there's a third option, which is...
They find out?
Well, yeah, true. They just find out through however. But the third option is this, is whether they leave me or whether they stay with me, if I get honest and I work on myself and I learn how to show up as a person who's not behind all of this shame and all of this crappy feelings of who I am, then I'm going to be able to create love, trust, and safety in my future relationship, whether it's with that person or not. But most importantly, I'm going to be able to move forward myself and love myself again. And that can happen.
Totally can.
If you face the music, if you start to get honest.
So it sounds like that you're going to go into this, if you're admitting to, hey, this is where I'm at, you're going into it without expectations.
Absolutely. You don't know where the chips are going to fall.
Either way, or if I'm going to ask Kobe the expectation, I don't know what it is.
You don't know how it's all going to land and end up. But it's better than sitting in the misery, right?
Indeed. Guys, thanks for being here. This is a tough and hard conversation, but this is an important one. So I'd love to have you rate and review the podcast.
Subscribe.
And love you to subscribe. And if you've heard anything that you liked, love to have you share it as well. You never know who this is going to help.
See you guys.
Peace out.
Bye-bye. And you guys can subscribe to YouTube. You'll get a live update when we are uploading.